It's Stephanie, and I am here to do another Four of a Kind video. And today, that video is on books that take place in Michigan. Random. Stephanie, are you from Michigan? No, I am not. I am from California, but my husband is from Michigan. And because of that, I do know some facts about Michigan. People from Michigan have a ridiculous amount of state pride. I haven't been to that many states, granted, but people from Michigan are like legit proud to be from Michigan and be a Michigander. Also, Michigan is considered the American Midwest, which means people are weird there and they say things like pop instead of soda. Most of the books I'm going to be talking about today take place in the southern part of Michigan. I do realize there is like a whole other section of the state, and that's actually where my husband is from, is like way up there in northern Michigan. So I didn't forget about you, northern Michigan. So hey there, UP, Traverse City, all those areas. I'm not from there. I can't just like name off cities. As you can imagine, the books I'm going to be talking about deal mostly with Detroit and the areas around Detroit. But these books were fascinating, and the Michigan setting and the places where they were set did contribute a bit to the story, so that's why I wanted to talk about them with you today. There's only one I don't own. So the first one I wanted to talk about is The Turner House by Angela Flournoy. I don't own that. I had that one from the library. And then Broken Monsters by Lauren Beukes, Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides, and The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. I think all of Jeffrey Eugenides' books take place in Michigan, but I haven't read The Marriage Plot. I think that's the only one I haven't read by him. Let's start off with Broken Monsters by Lauren Beukes. This takes place in Detroit in current day, so of course it is basically after the decline of Detroit. Netflix has no shortage of like Detroit documentaries taking you through basically the carcass of what once used to be like a booming industrial city. People call it like the corpse of the American dream. There's just a lot of empty buildings and warehouses, and the economy there is just crazy. Housing prices have plummeted, and because of that there's been kind of this mass exodus of hipsters and like artists that can find housing for cheap and can basically focus on their art. And I'm talking about that because that is kind of a big part of this book. Kind of a supernatural thriller that takes place in Detroit, and the artist is very Hannibal-esque. And the detective finds the body of a 12-year-old boy, but he's been melded together with like half of the body of a deer. So it's like top half boy, bottom half deer. It is very grotesque, and stuff like this keeps turning up. So yeah, it's like a thriller murder mystery, and so that is the basic premise, but it does deal with kind of this young underground art scene. What's interesting about this is Lauren Beukes is from South Africa. She is not American. Of course, she has visited Detroit and wrote about it, but not in a way that seemed exploitive. Like she was exploiting. I felt like she treated the city and the setting with care, and in a sense where it did contribute to the story. I really liked this. If you're looking for a dark thriller, you don't mind a supernatural-esque element, and the city of Detroit is something that interests you, I would definitely suggest checking this out. I really enjoyed it. Had great writing and great pacing. The next book I wanted to talk about is The Turner House, which is a family drama that also takes place in modern day Detroit. It follows the Turners, who are a black family, and it's one of my favorite premises for a family drama, which is basically about a family with adult children having to come together. So it's all the adult siblings coming together to make a decision of some kind because of their parents, and in this case their father has died and their mother is very ill, and they have to decide what to do with their childhood home that they grew up with, because it is basically worthless. I think they said like they bought it for $40,000, and now with the economy it is worth, I think if I remember correctly, like $4,000 or $3,000, just something ridiculous like that. So that is a big part of it, but it's also them dealing with their own problems, gambling addiction. There is a character who thinks he sees a ghost. It was just absolutely fascinating, and dealing with the adult children that have stayed, that have to deal with this lifestyle, and just the stubbornness that comes with being a native Detroiter. And there was a quote, and I normally try not to curse on this channel, so letting you know I'm gonna read a quote and it's gonna curse. I know I don't need to give any type of a warning, but just letting you know because it's weird. One of the adult siblings is a cop, and he's talking to his other friend who's talking about getting a tattoo, and he wants something in Latin, and he's thinking about the city motto, which I guess is "We hope for better things." Here's the quote I wanted to talk about. It's, I don't just sit around hoping for nothing, I do shit. It's the hope part that fucks that line all up. You should change it to something like, we fight for better things, or we work for better things, or we plan for better things. That's what's wrong with this city. I just thought it was really interesting to kind of dig into that sentiment of frustration where it's like, what can we do? Just all of it is absolutely frustrating, and it was interesting to read a book that deals with people that are currently living in Detroit and have to deal with this. Everything that's going on there was just crazy. As far as the book goes, just a solid family drama about a big sprawling family and adult children and their problems all coming together, which is stuff that I love. So I definitely recommend it if you haven't picked it up. Okay guys, I'm gonna try to go fast because I think my battery's about to die. So the next book I want to talk about is Middlesex by Eugenides. This is a family saga, but it's basically about the story of our main character, Cal/Calliope, who is born intersex, and it's the story of basically his whole family immigrating to America, to specifically Detroit, from Greece. When the Stephanides family moves to Detroit, you know, it is booming, and we just see kind of the history of the city in the background, to the point where in the late 60s, the family moves out of Detroit because of the riots and instability, and they move to a nice suburb called Grosse Pointe. It was really interesting because Eugenides really gets into the pushback that the family got trying to move into this kind of nice, mostly white suburb, and it was this very big, ethnic, Greek, loud family, really getting into the discrimination that they faced trying to get into this suburb. I thought was absolutely interesting, but the setting is just so important to this novel, and just how it's quietly in the background, but we do see a history and the change of the city. This was my favorite book that I read last year. I love family sagas. I adore Eugenides' writing, so if you haven't checked him out, I definitely suggest giving this a try. Last book I wanted to talk about is The Virgin Suicides, also by Eugenides, and I picked it in this order because this book exclusively takes place in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, which from the last book is where the family moved to. So this is a suburb outside of Detroit. This takes place in the 70s. That is actually the city where the author Eugenides grew up. And there was just a very interesting quote about why he picked this as a setting that I wanted to read. I grew up watching houses and buildings fall apart and then disappear. It imbued my sense of the world with a strong, elegant quality, a direct experience of the fragility and evanescence of the material world. That was what I was really writing about. I had imagined a family of suicidal sisters, 5 brief lives, and I put them in an atmosphere of ruin and decay, the dying automobile plants, the dying elms. But the source of all this, psychologically and emotionally, had to do with the impermanence of everything I knew as a child, which you can just definitely see in the background of the story if you pay attention to the description of the house and just the slow decay of everything. This book is lyrical and beautiful. It is straight up depressing. No spoilers here. It is about 5 teenage sisters who all commit suicide. It says so. No spoilers. This is the first sentence. On the morning the last Lisbon daughter took her turn at suicide, it was Mary this time, and sleeping pills like Therese. The 2 paramedics arrived at the house, knowing exactly where the knife drawer was, and the gas oven, and the beam in the basement from which it was possible to tie a rope. So if you can get past just the melancholy, sad, depressing tone of it, I love this book. It is so beautiful. It is told in this, I don't know what you would call it, like a plural first person. It is a group. The narrator is a group of boys in the neighborhood. It's a we. It's never an I. It's just this group of neighborhood boys who become obsessed with these Lisbon sisters. They're very mysterious, and they have these strict Catholic parents.